Welcome to the Asset Reliability at Work podcast.
Endless journey of delight and profitability.
I think some people use it as a derogatory term towards accountants.
Being visible to the employees is important.
Hey, podcast listeners, welcome back for another episode on the Asset Reliability at Work podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be speaking with Roger Corley. If you remember, he was just on the show not too long ago. I believe he might have been 3 episodes ago, so just over a month. And Roger is a work management and materials management subject matter expert, so he's got an incredible amount of knowledge. So he's joining the podcast today to help us talk about the 6 traits that every great maintenance planner must have. And I'd like to remind you about Roger's background really quickly. He boasts over 30 years of experience in maintenance planning and scheduling, as well as materials management, and like we said, work management as well. Roger is also a certified facilitator right here at the Lifecycle Institute, where he teaches most notably the materials planning and scheduling course. He's going to explain the role of the maintenance planner within a manufacturing organization and those common characteristics that every great planner possesses. Without further ado, I want to kick it off with you, Roger, and just ask you the basic question, and that is, what are the responsibilities of the maintenance planner? Now, do the responsibilities vary depending on the organization, or are they same throughout?
Well, Derek, that's a good question because I get this an awful lot when I go to client sites, and one thing that is common to all clients is they tell me the same thing, that we're different. And no, you're not. Planning is planning. It doesn't matter if you're in a chocolate factory in Tel Aviv or if you're in a uranium mine in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. It doesn't matter. You're still a planner, and still these same competencies will show up.
A planner is a planner. It doesn't matter at what facility. It's the same competencies, the same knowledge base. So let that be a lesson right now. It's the same. All right, now let's move on and identify what I want to know are some example activities planners will plan for.
People tend to separate planners into planning for maintenance and planning for turnarounds, which to me they're exactly the same thing. But planning maintenance activities, things like replacing mechanical seals or maybe changing a valve here or there, maybe an instrument, let's just say a level indicator or a flow indicator, something like that. So those are all plannable jobs.
One question that I'd like to just put some clarity on is right here, we talk a lot about maintenance planning and scheduling, and we tend to chunk this maintenance planning and the maintenance scheduling into like one topic, where you've told me that they're very different. So let's clear the air here. Just tell me the difference between a maintenance planner versus a maintenance scheduler.
To me, it's always been a best practice for me if your organization can support it, to have a different person doing planning and a different person doing scheduling. The reason why is planners tend to think out in the future. I tend to say over the horizon, and schedulers are usually involved are in the day-to-day activities, what happened today, and what are we going to do tomorrow, that type thing, and they tend to have 2 different skill sets, in my opinion.
Okay, I get it. So, yeah, the planner is the position where the person will think more about maybe the future, into the future a little bit, of how they're going to maybe conduct certain activities around the plant or the facility. And the scheduler is, like you said, your day-to-day guy who's going to get it done, be in the trenches and work it out. Perfect. So let's move on to the 6 traits that every great planner must have. All right, Roger, what is that first trait?
Well, you have to be a good communicator, first and foremost. You've got to be able to put thoughts together on a piece of paper. You've got to be able to verbally express yourself well. And that's important, just not only to get the job done, but just to have a clear understanding of what needs to be done.
Communication is king. Got it.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, let's move down to trait number 2. What do you think?
Well, I think it's you have to be kind of a sequential thinker. Some people say maybe it's a logical step-by-step type person. But, thinking in sequence, I've had the opportunity to hire a few planners in my day. And one of the things I would look at is possibly a personality profile that says that they're very sequential, not necessarily concrete sequential, but I am that type of personality, by the way. And but someone who is a very sequential thinker that can think through steps that have to go into a job.
All right. So far what we have is good communicator, number 1, and a sequential thinker for your second trait. Now, go ahead and tell us what that third trait is.
Got to be a computer literate. You've got that's how we work in today's society. I can remember back when I first became a planner, work orders were written on a piece of paper in triplicate, and and that's how they got communicated. Well, it's not that way anymore, guys. It's now we're talking about computer programs and much more sophisticated computer programs than even 5 years ago. Programs like Maximo or SAP or MP2 or Interall. There's just a number of different types of programs out there. They all do some things better than others, but they all do one thing and do only one thing very well, and that's help you to plan jobs. Yeah.
So you're definitely still seeing some people struggling with the computer literacy end, huh?
Well, yeah, that and and I think some of it, Derek, is because planners typically come out of the crafts, and our crafts are getting older, and some of the more experienced people may not be as comfortable with computers as some of the younger guys. And I think being able not just with the CMMS, because you're considered a super user of the CMMS, but you also need to be comfortable with other like Office Suite programs and things like that. And don't be afraid of them. They're not going to hurt you. And computers are our friends.
Very well said. So what is that fourth trait that every great planner must have?
I would say great personal organizational skills. The organizational skills, and what I'm talking about there is being able to juggle, if you will, multiple work orders at one time in various stages of completion, and being able to keep up with that kind of thing. And that requires some different type thinking that some people have, and you can, one of those strengths, being able to handle those things, will make you a very, very good planner.
All right, and trait number 5.
Number 5 to me is attention to detail. When I was in the Navy, that was the one thing they drove into me, attention to detail. Don't leave stuff out. Don't just assume things. Make sure that you finish. Those type things that they really help you a lot. But being a detail type person, some people may call it a little bit OCD, and that's okay. That's a perfect fit.
Sure. OCD is a positive thing in this case.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. And let's go ahead and wrap up and talk about trait number 6.
Probably one of the hardest things, being able to visualize a job in your mind's eye, being able to understand all the intricacies that go into maintenance work, being able to go out and look at a job in the field, see it done, imagine it done, and think about issues that possibly will come up and avoiding those issues. And to me, it's one of the harder traits to find in people. But some people are really good at this, and I've always been better at this than probably some of the other things. But being able to understand what goes into a job and to do it well and to avoid any kind of trouble spots.
All right, Roger. So if you don't mind, I'm going to recap really quick all 6 traits, because I know we kind of went that a little fast, but today we digest information very quickly. So let's go back to number 1. Number 1 was to be a good communicator. So be able to think about what you want to communicate and how you're going to communicate that to your team. Trait number 2 was to be a sequential thinker, really think out the process, the steps, the logic of it all. Trait number 3 is computer literate. So, it's something that you wouldn't expect to be maybe a problem in today's standard, but yeah, there's definitely some computer literacy issues out there. And I think no matter what job function you're in, you have to be literate and have to know how to use a computer, especially like Roger mentioned earlier, with all these new capabilities and systems and softwares that are available specifically within the manufacturing industry. So computer literacy for number 3. Trait number 4, organizational skills. Everybody at some point should really just think about how they're organizing their day-to-day activities, what's up next for your job. How I think about it is to be organized at your facility, at your work desk, is to have a clear mind. What is it? A clutter-free desk is a clutter-free mind. Organizational skills is key. Trait number 5 was attention to detail. So not to overlook anything. Make sure, even if it's just, if it's an extra 5 seconds or an extra 5 minutes, take your time to really understand what the details are of what you're doing. And then finally, the last trait for every great planner is to be able to visualize. Visualize what's going to happen next. Be able to look at the problem of the activity, the problem of the job, and visualize how it's going to be done and the outcome of the work that's going to be completed. Very key. Roger, that was going to be my last question for you. But when we're talking, I'm just curious about how people develop the skills of a planner. Is this something that is trained? Is people have to go to classes for? Or is it just kind of like stuff you just pick up while you're doing a different job?
Well, it needs to be taught. I think the reason that we recommend, we being LCE, recommend that you look at people that are in craft to become planners is because they tend to think very sequentially. They tend to think in step by step. They may not be as strong on computers as some other folks, but that can be taught. They generally are pretty organized. If you look at some of these mechanics and electricians' toolkits, you'll see that they're pretty organized, and whether they're doing 5S or they may be doing 5S and don't even know what 5S is. They're generally very detail-oriented people, and so those type of people really do make good planners. The ancillary stuff, the stuff that comes around it with the verbal and written skills, the CMMS super user type thing, those can all be taught. But definitely there needs to be some training as to what a planner is, because it's amazing today, and it's 2017, that there are still places out there who just don't believe that we even need planners. And whenever we start quoting things like a good qualified planner, for every hour that they spend doing planning, they'll save 3 hours in the performance of the job. So
wow,
it's a proven fact that that's what happens. And why in the world you would not want to take advantage of that, I just don't understand.
Once again, excellent insight from you, Roger. Thank you so much for being on the episode, coming back for a second time, which means you must have enjoyed it the first time, not because I desperately pleaded with you to come back on the episode. But I do want to say something really quick to our listeners. As we always do in our show notes, we provide a couple extra resources for you to learn more about the topics of that episode. And so for this episode, there's a couple links on there, on the show notes, that is. There's a couple articles that have been written in the past by us that really talk more about the maintenance planner. So there's an article called "Avoid the Misguided Application of the Maintenance Planner Scheduler." There's another online article, "Maintenance Planners at the Center of It All." So those are two really good reads if you're interested in learning more about this. And then, of course, we have the Lifecycle Institute has a Maintenance Planning and Scheduling Institute course. So it's a really great course. Just check it out. It's got some really good professional development tools within that course that you can apply immediately on the job after you're done taking it. And then also, we always put this in our show notes, is a link to Roger Corley's LinkedIn profile. So connect with him, ask him questions, anything you want. He's a very open guy. And so thanks again for joining the episode. And we look forward to another episode of the Asset Reliability at Work podcast. Hey, listeners, one more thing before you go. If you have any feedback for the show, or you have maybe some suggestions for upcoming topics you'd love to hear about, we'd like to hear from you. So there's two ways to get in contact with us. The first is on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @LCE_.